David Broadbent I'd done a lot of work experience with at school and actually coached his daughter in rowing, put me in touch with Gary Fenton. Now, Gary Fenton is a absolute Australian broadcasting legend. And he was at Channel 7 and just moved to a company called the Sydney Olympic Broadcasting Organisation. And he was looking for people to fill roles. And Gary interviewed me and then offered me the chance of a lifetime to go to Sydney and work on the Sydney Olympics. And I was one of the, I think, first 10 employees of the Sydney Olympic Broadcasting Organisation. So I got to see that whole movement from the ground up. And it was a very, very unique and special sort of experience for me.
G'day guys, coming up on the show today is Melissa Lawton. Melissa is the Chief Content Officer at SailGP, which has just launched in Sydney. Have a listen to a few of these past workplaces Melissa's worked at. So you've got SailGP, Meta, Redbull, Commonwealth Games, Beijing and Sydney Olympic Games, just to name a few. There's plenty to tune in for, including how she got her foot in the door at Sydney 2000, taking her career around the world and an insight into the broadcast and content side of sport. Let's go.
I started volunteering.
It's all about who you know in sport.
Am I going to be calling the last 10 seconds of the grand final?
You can connect with the interviewer. The hand goes up when they've got to make a decision.
Having a network is one of the most important things you can do.
I didn't necessarily follow my passion. I followed my curiosity.
Once you've worked in sport, there's no going back.
And then lo and behold, before I left, I got offered two.
Hello and welcome to the SportsGrad podcast, your bite-sized guide to enter the sports industry. I'm Ryan Walker and joining me is the great technical man, Ruben Williams. We are two mates who met at Cricket Australia and each week we learn how people made it in the sports industry and then tease out their career decisions, work habits, skills and all the things they do that make them great. So you can learn how to get your first job or your next job in sport and progress your career. Rubes, how are you, mate?
G'day, Ryan. I'm doing well, thank you. Technical today. I don't mind that. My something that I got tested on technically most recently was I went back and played grassroots cricket, which I thought I had escaped.
I thought we were done with this as well.
I thought I was out of it, but no, I got called back into the Wycliffe Twos and was called upon to captain the side. I haven't played it.
I didn't know this.
I haven't played a game of cricket for the entire season. There's 2 games left and they asked me to captain the Twos. So I jumped at the opportunity.
This is brilliant.
Lost the toss, got sent into bat. Team put on a respectable 6 for 219, chipped in with 36. Technique was there or thereabouts. Had a bit of experience or had a bit of time to work on my cricketing abilities in a couple of my recent travels. So when I went to India recently, I
walked some turning pitches.
Yeah, I walked past a cricket team training in India, and they said, "Hey, do you want to come in and have a hit?" So I ended up batting in the pitches in India, and then prior to that, we were in Perth late last year, so we caught up with good friend of the show, Tom Scollay, who runs Cricket Mentoring.
Great friend of the show.
He had a net session with us. I still remember a few of his bits of advice. And then even when I was working on the T20 Cricket World Cup with the UAE cricket team, had a net session with them. And actually, that led to a second net session because when I went to Dubai just before the Qatar World Cup, I caught up with the UAE cricket team and went to training with them. So I had another session with them.
So what you're telling me is you've actually been training up until this moment. You've put in the work. You've had net sessions leading up to this and you've gone in and hit 37.
I've been practicing with the best of the best. My mate CP Rizwan has just won the ILT 20 League over in Dubai. So everything has been pointing towards the Wycliffe Twos.
I love this because I love when we don't... we haven't debriefed that. That's the first time I've heard about that. But I must say I was a little bit suspicious when I saw on Instagram on the weekend there's a person in full Cricket Australia whites. And that sort of screams to me like, Ruben must be playing cricket.
Yeah, my mate Sean, he's somehow got a pair of Australian whites from back when we were there.
There's a few guys down there in the H grade.
Yeah.
I think I might have bought a couple down once upon a time.
Yeah.
Anyway, they love it.
Half the club's got some somehow.
No, that's brilliant. It's good to see you're back playing cricket. I'm sure you'll be there every week from now on, yeah?
Absolutely.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, I'll come down eventually. How many games left?
1. There's still time.
This weekend might be me.
Yeah.
All right, we could talk cricket all day, so let's get cracking. Guys, follow us on LinkedIn, and if you want to connect with us and hundreds of others working in sport, become a member of the SportsGrad community. Rose, what has been happening in the community at the moment?
Oh, mate, it's been going off. So a couple of wins from our community recently. I love this one. This just shows the globalness of the SportsGrad community. So Zoe Van Malken, who is over in the Netherlands, she has just started working on the talent development program for the Dutch Motorsport Association.
How?
Like,
that's epic.
Producing future F1 drivers.
That makes me think of a Max.
Exactly. She's creating the pathway for future Maxes.
Yeah, that's
In
huge.
fact, when she joined one of our Q&As, she talked about her relation to Max Verstappen. I'm pretty sure they went to the same school.
Yeah.
Knows the family and all that. So well done to you, Zoe, on that incredible project that you've got your hands on. Bradley Colero just landed a job as a competition coordinator over at AFL NT. He's off to Alice Springs. Good on you, Brad. And Jordan Wilson has just got a job as an athlete development coordinator at Hockey Queensland. So well done to you, Jordan, too. Lots of jobs posted on our brand new job board, just a couple of weeks old now. So Geelong Football Club have got a good one in there. Membership and marketing coordinator. Premier Data got another good one. Match statistics capturer. That one's based in a few states. The Brisbane Broncos marketing coordinator again as well. So lots to check out on our job board. There's a link in our show notes if you want to check out the latest jobs there. And then some upcoming events. Now, we've recently just launched our brand new segment at the end of this show, but also the extended edition happens every Wednesday night. So if you liked our previous bite-sized episodes where you could tune in on a Thursday and get some short, sharp bits of advice to help you with your career, well, they're gone, I'm sorry to say, but they live on in a much more detailed format every Wednesday night on Zoom where you can join Ask SportsGrad. So a couple of things to look forward to. Now, on these sessions, it's either you or I answering the questions on a specific topic, or we get our guest experts in. So Melissa, who you're just about to hear from, if you want to chat with Melissa, who's got an incredible wealth of knowledge, if you want to ask her questions and add it to your network, then join our session with her coming up on the 1st of March. We've also got another one that's just happened on resumes and cover letters, so you can also go back and watch that too. There's more coming up on the topics of LinkedIn. And next week, I'm going to give away our guest slightly here.
Go on, give the exclusive.
They come from the New York Redbulls and they work as a senior manager in commercial partnerships over in New York. So if you want to chat all things commercial partnerships, there's a Q&A coming up with that very special guest in the future too. So lots to look forward to in the community. But if you want to stay up to date with absolutely everything that's happening, whether it's jobs, events, you name it, podcast episodes, then jump on the newsletter. The newsletter is a brand new way to stay up to date with everything. Every Friday, you'll see an email from us come through. To subscribe to that, head to the link in our show notes, sportsgrad.com.au/newsletter to join. And get a little bit of fun in your Friday from SportsGrad with all the latest updates.
It's fantastic. And also including in that is all the new jobs that are appearing on our brand new job board. So it's absolutely packed at the moment. Geelong Footy Club, the Broncos, Premier Data jumped in. There's just so many opportunities. So subscribe to that newsletter and you will get it all in your inbox on a Friday. Alrighty, Rose, let's jump in. Grab a pen, enjoy this chat with Melissa Lawton. Before we jump into the episode, we've got a quick message from our good friends at Deakin University. Deakin has been a huge supporter of SportsGrad since day one. If you're currently studying or you've just finished studying, having a postgrad qualification in sports management on your resume can give you a huge leg up over other potential candidates applying for that same role. So if you want to pump up your resume and get specialised knowledge in sports behaviour, law, marketing, ethics, finance, governance and strategy, take a look at Deakin's postgrad qualifications. Their Master of Business in Sports Management is not one of, but the best one in Australia, ranked at number 1. So add a postgrad to your resume, and that's our tip for the episode. Melissa, welcome to the SportsGrad podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to find out that you're running this podcast and inviting a lot of Australians in sport to speak, and I'm really thrilled that I'm one of those people.
Well, you're a recommendation. We put out a post on LinkedIn to say, hey, who would be a great guest to get on the show? And your name popped up. And we've never spoken to anyone in the sailing community. And so to chat with someone at the exec level at SailGP is super exciting for us personally. But for those who have never heard of SailGP or don't know what goes on at SailGP, how do you describe this to your family and your friends at Christmas time when they're asking you, Melissa, what's going on in your world?
Well, basically, it's motorsports on water, except it's powered by nature. So it's without all the nasty stuff. It's a sport that sort of, I guess you could say, was born of the America's Cup. Larry Ellison is the founder. Obviously, he very powerful force when America won back the America's Cup. And Sir Russell Coutts is the CEO and like one of the greatest sailors of all time and a legendary figure. And those two came together and brought a very, I guess, elite group of people in the events business to run an event that brought sailing closer to the people. And I think that's the key to SailGP is it's onshore racing, which means it's close to the shore, so you can see it from land. It's very, very high speeds. I think the record was 99.9 kilometers an hour was reached when we were in Saint-Tropez just recently. Very high tech, obviously with Oracle and the NEAR protocol and Rolex behind it. We have a lot of really high-tech equipment on board the boats. We send millions and millions of data points per second over the cloud to bring you augmented reality. So the course is laid out in augmented reality, so you can see which boats are in front of and which boats are sort of catching up and which boats are taking different courses for different reasons. But I think the really big one for us, a big USP, is that sort of powered by nature. We're a very purpose mission org, and I think from a working at the company perspective, that's very important to many people who are there. So if we called it motorsport on water, it's probably closer to NASCAR, where it's everyone starts at the same time. You got to get across that line, and then it can be chaos for the next 16 minutes, or or someone can get out in front and take the wind and really establish themselves. And I guess the important thing for Australians also is Tom Slingsby and the Australians are on top of the ladder for the third year in a row. And the event's coming to Sydney this weekend, so he'll be out to win it again.
Awesome. And what's the format of the comp? So there's obviously teams, like how many teams, how many races, how does it all play out?
So there's 9 teams. Teams are based on nationality. So they're all, there's the Australians, the Americans, Brits, Spanish, French. So 9 teams line up. It's called a fleet race. So everyone lines up together. They've got to cross. The race actually starts before the start line. So there's a start line that's sort of live. All those boats head at a rapid pace towards that start line. They've got to cross at exactly the right time. And that's where a lot of this data comes in. They have screens on board where they can see the positioning of their boat and everyone else's boat, and the precise second that they need to sort of cross that start line so that they don't get a foul or a penalty, as they call it in sailing. And then they race however many legs that the course is set for. So it could be 6 legs, could be 7 legs. And the winning boat, the boat that finishes or crosses the finish line first is the winner. So it's pretty simple format. And I guess it's that augmented reality race course that's placed over the, that gives perspective to, especially from the broadcast viewers. They can literally see where each boat is and the chances it will have to win the race.
And speaking of high tech, you mentioned all the data points. Do you know how much one of these boats is worth?
A lot of money. A lot of money. I work on the broadcast side, and at times people within the company say, "What do you really need?" And I said, "Closer action." Everyone loves to see two boats come up really close. They're traveling at such a fast pace. When they get close to each other, they're always in danger. There's that jeopardy. Will they crash? Won't they crash? Do they have the skills to get by? What's the wind doing? And I know the league really doesn't want them to crash. We had a lightning strike on one of the boats, on the New Zealand boat, when we're in Singapore, and the damage that costs, to all the electricals in the boat is just very, very expensive.
I heard a figure somewhere in the realm of 180 million euros thrown around. Is that ballpark or higher, lower?
No, that's way higher than these. These boats are all, I guess what I should have said in the beginning is that these boats are all identical. So they're manufactured by SailGP Technologies, and each boat is exactly the same. So when you get to other racing series, it's the boat that makes the difference. Here it's the athletes who make the difference. So 180 million euros might be for the highest of high-tech America's Cup boats, and that's like just a completely different level, and that is about boat versus boat. Whereas I think for SailGP, one of the reasons why Larry and Russell came together on this topic is because they wanted it to be athlete skill versus athlete skill. So at the end of the day in SailGP, it's the best athletes win, the best crew win. Because the boats are complete. There's no advantage. There's no nation that can come in and just spend more money on their boats. And I think that's why it's really, really exciting league.
Nice. Melissa, this year on the podcast, we've got a brand new segment. So you're only the second person to I guess, endure this segment, which is called Quickfire Questions. So this is aimed at helping us get to know you that little bit better. They're nothing too hairy in this one, so you should be just fine. But Ruse will have the first one, and then we'll fire a few questions at you.
All right, Melissa, first one. What was your first ever job?
My first ever paid job where I got a paycheck was waitressing.
Nice. Did you go to uni? And if so, what did you study?
I studied journalism at RMIT. And then I did a second degree years later. I did a master's in international relations at University of New South Wales.
Fantastic. And favourite sporting moment?
For me, the one that really I have two. Sorry, can I do two?
Yeah, go for it.
Kathy Freeman winning at the Sydney Olympics was without a doubt. That was a heart-stopping moment, and I think everyone in the stadium was very, very emotional. And the other one was it's a really weird one, but it was Korea beating Italy in the 2002 World Cup. I was there in Korea at the time, and you could see the collective sigh of relief from an entire nation, and then the joy and the jubilance of that moment created this sort of nation moving experience. Is the only thing I would describe that as.
I think they were the first Asian country to make the semi-finals of the World Cup that year. So a worthy favourite.
Yeah, I remember that. I was in year 2. What's your favourite?
Yeah,
don't know why I said that. What's your favourite interview question to ask candidates?
My favourite one is tell me a time when you failed but really learnt something from that failure.
That would test a few people. What's one book or podcast you recommend that's helped you at work?
Oh, for me, it was Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. She, I joined SailGP from Meta, and before I joined Meta, I read Lean In, and it was very impactful on how I approached my working life.
Nice. Are you associated with any grassroots sporting clubs?
Not at the moment. My daughters have started rowing at Twickenham Rowing Club through their school, so I will get involved with Twickenham. But in the past, I was a coxswain and rowed on the Yarra in Melbourne for many, many years.
Beautiful. I ride my bike past those people all the time now. Finally, if you had 30 minutes to pick anyone's brain, who would it be?
That's a really tough one. I did try and think about this when you asked. I think at the moment I don't have one particular person. It would probably be my boss at the moment. But yeah, I think in every situation, there's anyone in front of you can get 30 minutes of good information from. So I don't have that one standout character who I'm like, oh, I've always wanted to speak to them and ask them X. So I'm going to give you a dud answer and say like the person who I need information from at the time.
I like that. Just naturally curious about everyone. It's a good way to be.
Yeah, I hope so.
Awesome. Now, I'm glad you mentioned the Sydney Olympics and Kathy Freeman, because in doing some preparation for your interview, we came across the mountain of experiences that you have had in your career. So listeners, just brace yourself for this while I just run through it very quickly. In the past, Melissa, not only have you been the Chief Content Officer at SailGP, there's Head of Production at Meta, which is Facebook/Instagram, over in New York, Head of Live Redbull TV over in Salzburg in Switzerland, Senior Producer at the Commonwealth Games based in New Delhi, Producer and Sports Programming Manager at the Beijing Olympics, Manager of Sports Programming and Producer at the Sydney Olympics Games. I'm guessing that's where Kathy came into it?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, a lot of amazing experiences there. My husband was also competing in rowing in the Sydney Olympics, so it was a big one for me.
Oh, incredible. Wow. Sports journalist at The Age, Melbourne's biggest newspaper, producer at V8 Supercars with Network 10, Goodwill Games, 2002 FIFA World Cup and the Melbourne Cup. I think a lot of people would be happy if they worked at any one of them in their entire career, let alone all of them. What did you think you would be doing at this stage of your career when you left uni? All of that?
When I was at uni, it was quite interesting because I was very heavily in the rowing community in Melbourne. I rowed at school. My boyfriend, who's now my husband, back then, he was rowing and going for an Olympics. My life was very much around one particular sport, and I wasn't interested in any of the key team sports in Australia at the time. So I wasn't really into AFL, rugby, or any of those sports. And when I was at uni, I was very much going there to be a foreign correspondent. I wanted to be a print journo, and I wanted to travel the world reporting on politics from all over the globe. And I guess after uni, I did take my year-long break to do the traveling that many of us do and go and see what the rest of the world had to offer. And while I was there, I had been reporting for The Age on rowing as coming up to the Olympics. I was like a special correspondent, I would say. And I went to Switzerland where they had a sort of qualifying regatta and I reported for Associated Press or Australian Associated Press then. And then I went to watch my now husband compete at the Atlanta Olympics. And I thought, well, the Olympics are pretty special events. I was sort of, Atlanta Olympics were a difficult one. If you go back in ancient history and look at how the organizing committee put Atlanta together, it was a really tough games to be a spectator at, or it could be really great games to be a spectator at because they didn't have a ticket lottery. So if you found someone who had tickets, you could go to anything. I mean, I saw the Americans play basketball which was the dream team back then. So yeah, I had that, I guess, experience at the Atlanta Olympics. And when I came back, I sat for my cadetships with newspapers. And I think what really came home to me was I could go and do a cadetship at the, Warrnambool Gazette, or I think it was Warrnambool or Wollongong or somewhere like that. And I would have to do sort of the 3 years of, local news reporting. And I just had this amazing life-changing experience traveling internationally. And at the same time, I believe it was, I can't remember the person's name who put me in touch with Gary Fenton. Now, Gary Fenton is a absolute Australian broadcasting legend. And he was at Channel 7 and just moved to a company called the Sydney Olympic Broadcasting Organisation. And he was looking for people to fill roles. And someone, I think David Broadbent was the person. David Broadbent I'd done a lot of work experience with at school and actually coached his daughter in rowing. And he recommended me to Gary. And Gary interviewed me, very, very tough interview. And then offered me the chance of a lifetime to go to Sydney and work on the Sydney Olympics. And I was one of the, I think, first 10 employees of the Sydney Olympic Broadcasting Organisation. So I got to see that whole movement from the ground up. And it was a very, very unique and special sort of experience for me.
That is incredible. I love how doing rowing coaching led to your first experience at the Olympics, which is just amazing how those smaller clubs can lead to incredible things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also networking, isn't it? Because, when you find someone that you coach or that you get to know through sports and you find out that their parents perhaps do have a wonderful job. I think I'm trawling back in my memory. I think David Broadbent was like the head of news for Channel 9 at the time. And he gave me a lot of opportunities to do work experience in what I thought I was going to end up in, which was, being a journalist or being a foreign correspondent and reporting on politics, which was my absolute passion. So he took a chance on me as well, saying, I obviously knew the business and was working up in that broadcasting or journalistic space, but having gone to an Olympics was pretty much the one criteria Gary Fenton thought was valuable for giving me a job as the manager of sports programming for the Sydney Olympics. Nice.
Would you say Sydney was the most transformative piece of experience in your career, or does something else stick out to you?
Sydney was a massive learning experience and learning from a perspective. It was very political, Sydney Olympics. It was I learned a lot about sort of strategic thought, and politics was heavily involved in sports. So I really did get to understand different ways of thinking, I guess. It wasn't a regular job. And I was also exposed to people like, Manolo Romero, who both Gary and Manolo passed away these past 6 months, but these were just absolute legends in the industry. These were people who were building legacies and creating differences globally. So I think Sydney was important from a understanding strategic thinking. But I think my most transformative would have been going to Redbull in Salzburg, because Redbull, at Redbull you sort of think differently again, and it's a little, while it is strategic, it's also about being disruptive and thinking outside the box a lot.
How do they encourage that?
I mean, it's part of the DNA. First of all, you're in a tiny country in the middle of Europe, and you're listening to a lot of input from around the globe. So you've got, I think they have 80 different head offices around the world, and you start to learn how different countries think differently or do things differently in sports and sports that are more important in some areas than others. I already knew that from the Olympics, that wrestling is like massive in sort of Iran or Turkey, but really not that important in Australia. So, and also we were building something called Redbull TV back then. So it was like the first time, I think there were only a couple of sports organizations who were looking at completely digital delivery of their content. And one of them was WWE and the other one was Redbull. Mr. Mateschitz, again, passed away just recently. He was a thinker before his time. He wanted to have a legacy of building a product that no one else had. He wanted to, Red Bull's more than just a can. I think it's body, mind, philosophy that you've got to be active in mentally and physically to move forward in life. And every sport that we were looking to program or get involved in had some sort of mental and physical aspect. It wasn't just sort of punching someone in the head and the one who punched harder wins. A lot of the sports that Red Bull get involved in are sort of the extreme action or, I guess, strategic sports as well. So Yeah, it was, I don't know how I think he brings a lot of like-minded people together. And that's, in the interview process, you can see, like, can you think differently? What have you done differently? But also, how do you connect that, mental prowess with physical prowess as well? So not that I really had the physical prowess, but I think I did. I definitely brought some experience to the company that they were needing, and also had that, I guess, fluidity of thought that they were looking for.
So you've gone from thinking that your career would start out as a political correspondent in all different parts of the world to creating TV productions for Redbull in Switzerland.
Redbull is in Austria, I should
Austria,
say.
sorry.
My career is similar in a way, because to what I originally thought it would be. I am traveling the globe, experiencing different cultures, understanding different ways of thinking. That's pretty much all what I wanted out of my original career path. I do take opportunities based on, is that an interesting company? Is it an interesting place to live? I don't necessarily just take a job because it's offered. It's the whole package that brings me to the table, really.
Right, because I was going to ask, like, how did you know that this was a right career decision for you? But it seems like you've got a framework that you've applied across your entire career, no matter where you've gone.
Well, I'm a working mum, so a couple of things, and this is a really important part. We went back to Australia after we lived in China and India, where it was amazing experiences for my husband and I, and he was working as well at that time, and you had help, so you didn't need to. You had help in the house, you had drivers at times, and you were earning a pretty good wage. When I had my first child in India, and we went back to Australia to join this, go back home, had our fun, let's head back home. I found heading back home very, very difficult after those experiences. And one of them was, with both of us working, our kids went into like full-time childcare, and I was pregnant with my second when we got back there, and the childcare was outrageously expensive. And had been living in France or traveling around Europe for 8 months, and we just realized that Europeans had a different attitude towards childcare, and it was very, very, very inexpensive. So we were looking, up with 2 kids and 2 adults working, and the stress of it all. We were looking to go to Europe. I was, sometimes you manifest your future by really thinking about it. And when Redbull came calling, I was like, they said, would you consider moving to Austria? And absolutely. I think I was paying per month what I was paying a week in childcare in Australia. So I do think of things like, when I talk about strategic thinking, and then moving to New York was another one where I go, okay, my kids are doing full-time, schooling in Austria and learning German, but their English skills are not that great. When Facebook, came knocking, it was the opportunity to move to New York felt like a good family opportunity, because like elementary school and that amazing American way of thinking positively and thinking that you can do anything, I thought that would be great for my kids. And now even moving to London, it's a little bit like, this is the destination where, putting my kids through British high school system is good for us. It's a little bit more similar to the Australian system, and they get to join a rowing club at school. So that's pretty much, I'd love to say every job was based on following a sport, but you just don't have that privilege, I guess, as a working mother.
Before we go back to SailGP, just quickly, what was it like working for Meta, one of the biggest companies in the entire world, based in New York?
Loved it. I mean, before COVID hit, had good 2 solid years of working on some amazing properties. So we worked with Major League Baseball, we worked with, surfing, WSL, we worked with Ironman, but then I also got like contracts that were La Liga and Champions League and Spent a lot of time in South America working on Copa Libertadores, which is an amazing football league down there. And I guess I could say that there's been so many points in my life where you can't get any better than this. Like, Facebook is an amazing place to work. The people you meet there and the levels of conversation you have are just out of this world. But you know, when COVID hit and, you know, it stopped being as glamorous for me, I guess. And it got very hard to be excited about doing more football on Zoom or whatever it was that the people were doing. I don't think there's a chance that I would have voluntarily left Facebook or, you know, Instagram if I think COVID hadn't sort of changed my perspective a bit about what I wanted in life. And I think just from what I've seen, most people had that, you know, same thought of like, what am I doing here? Is this the right place for me? Where is this going? I didn't want to work in tech long term, but the experience that I had there in sports tech was absolutely amazing. And I'm very grateful I got the opportunity.
Yeah, nice. Going back to SailGP, keen to understand sort of what are your key goals as the content team? What are you trying to achieve?
We're really trying to achieve more awareness for the sport. So we create a lot of different types of content. We have a broadcast that we're making, you know, world class. It's a very, very high quality broadcast, and the goal there is to get it on as many sort of, you know, free to air channels as possible globally, or, you know, to earn some money from sales of the rights. The reason why I say free to air at the moment is just we need awareness. You know, I think what we've found is when we get really good programming slots, particularly in the US, that people do see it like that motorsport on water experience. So they do watch it for a long time, and they watch it in huge numbers. So it's like I think our average audience on CBS is 1.6 million per hour. So that's a lot of people getting exposure, and they're not like sort of AFL football numbers, but they're definitely big numbers for a sport that's in its third season. So we know what we need to do. We need to get it out on as many channels as possible. Socially, again, driving awareness. So our social strategy is very, very different. We're very short clips. We're very much about the jeopardy or creating content that sort of feels cool and in the moment, and sort of extreme. I guess we go a little bit more for the extreme sports aspect on social media. And then we have a long form content called Racing on the Edge. And Racing on the Edge is again something that all of our broadcasters take, but we're also thinking about like, what's the next iteration of that long form series. At the moment, it serves the purpose of educating people about what is SailGP from each team. We need to get that out bigger and further, and that's.
So would you say a lot more of your experiences in the broadcast space than the social media space?
No, I think social media, that was why I said Redbull was a really important career step for me, because social was a driving force and something they took very, very seriously, and digital production is something they took very, very seriously. I joined Redbull just after the Stratos launch. So that's, you know, Redbull as a company went, hold on, why are we chasing linear broadcasting? They just this huge shift to creating their own sort of digital channel and digital sphere. The social content is something I'm really, really into. The linear broadcasting is very traditional. I've been doing it my entire life. I can look at a broadcast and really see how it's put together and see what it needs and see what it's got and what it's missing. Social is a constant process of trying new things, and I really like that. It's what keeps me very, you know, highly motivated to see if we put out these pieces of content in this way and then put out these pieces of content in a different way, which one's working or resonating with the audience. And what we even see is like the difference between like a Instagram audience versus a TikTok audience at the moment. It's amazing how the world really has compartmentalized itself into different sports viewing habits. And again, yeah, YouTube's another one, big one. And we do a podcast as well. So
We love that.
We make sure that, like, what does our podcast serve? It serves that audience that just wants to hear more about SailGP. And so it's very, very intensely about the sport, behind the scenes, and athletes. And we keep it that way. We're not trying to broaden that audience or dumb it down, because more people are joining that broadcast to get that insider edge, I guess, when they watch the next broadcast.
We've certainly found, whilst doing a whole lot of social stuff, that things are performing differently on different channels. And interestingly, personally for myself, I went to India recently and created a 90-second reel that I thought, got a bit of traction when I posted it, but 3 or 4 weeks later, some algorithm is still sending it into India. So I keep getting all these random likes from India. It's almost up to 1,000, which I've never even got close to before. So it's making me feel very popular.
You're probably a superstar there. What was it? Do you remember Ian Thorpe, big in Japan? So, you just never know. If you have global settings, you never know. I mean, honest to God, that's how NBA found out they had a massive audience in the Philippines. Back in the day, I can remember they had sending out their social content globally, and they could just see pickup in the Philippines. And that's become a really important part of their business strategy, that idea that there are countries out there that may not, seem likely to have a ton of followers. And then Indonesia, Philippines, and Southeast Asia, huge NBA fans.
Yeah. Well, talk to us about some skills to work in this space. What do you need to be the Chief Content Officer of SailGP one day?
Well, first of all, I have zero sailing background. I think I've done a few twilight sailing races in Sydney when I lived there, and really enjoyed it. And I had the Olympics experience, so I knew about sailing and I knew characters in sailing. But I don't have a deep sports experience in sailing itself. So you don't really need that to be successful. I think what you do need is hard skills. So when you were asking me before about what was pivotal, really pivotal to my career was going from the Sydney Olympics to Network 10, because I took a huge financial hit doing that. I started at the bottom at Network 10 in the sports department, because I was really aware that 4 years on the Sydney Olympics gave me a lot of strategic skills and, a lot of understanding about what the wider world looked like. But unless I was going to spend the rest of my career just doing the Olympics or just doing major sporting events, I was, I didn't have any hard skills there. I just had some good writing skills, some good understanding about sports globally, and a basic knowledge in how to put TV together. I think when I went back to Network 10, I got some really hard skills. I started off as like the lowest person in the sports department from a ranking perspective, and just worked my way up over 3 years. And the people that I met there, I mean, I still have contact with them, because a lot of them went into global positions as well, and have worked with, Sam Hurd, who's at Redbull, Scott Young, who's Warner Brother Media Discovery's head of content and production, David White, who was Lagardère and based here in London. So a lot of those people and a lot of the skills that I learned there taught me about, I guess, networking is really important. Get to know people in your industry and be in front of them where possible. But I learned how to do TV at Network 10. That's basically it. And you really need to know television, because you need to be a chief content officer needs to understand broadcast, social, I guess, Facebook and Redbull experience of really understanding algorithms and what they do and what content works and doesn't work. Like, those hard skills are really important in this job. And it's not often that people say that. It's the truth.
Yeah. Is that kind of saying, a lot of people we speak to will be like, okay, I want to work for the AFL one day. And as soon as there's an opportunity at the AFL, they'll go for it. But in the meantime, while you're learning all those skills, it's really worth going to, like, say, a smaller sport where you're going to be exposed to a lot of things that you might not at the AFL. You know, there's not as many jobs there, so you've got more responsibility. Is that kind of what happened there? You know, you're going from an Olympic Games to a national broadcaster. It's not small by any means, but you probably were exposed to some things as well.
Yeah, you're definitely exposed to decision making, and you know, you had to be everything, didn't you? I had to work on the OBs. I had to work in the office. I had to travel, and I had to learn that I could make it in the industry, because it's not easy to suddenly earn less money and still want to be a part of the entire industry. You know, it sets you on the right path. And I think from that Network 10 experience, I did get another experience to do another Olympic Games. You know, I got a call up from someone I'd worked with on the Sydney Olympics that knew that I was going through this experience, and that perhaps that, you know, my long-term career wasn't going to be at Network 10, that I, you know, did want to move out. But sometimes I look back and go, if I just stayed at Network 10, where would I be now? Like if I didn't make that decision to go to China. So in every case, taking that opportunity and learning something new. I should say one of the reasons why I left 10 and went to China is because I was doing my master's at the time in international relations, and I was focused on China was one of my subjects that I had a big focus on, and it felt important. You know, I thought perhaps I'd get back into sports, into political journalism at that point. So, you know, it was like an important decision of like, do I use this opportunity to relaunch my first love, which was sort of politics.
Speaking of learning and upskilling, we believe you're a big one for industry newsletters, and I think it's about 7:40 where you are in London at the moment, so we're probably taking up your industry newsletter time. But tell us a bit about how often you diving into these newsletters and which ones do you subscribe to?
I dive into them daily. I think I think I'm subscribed to at least four: Sportico, Sports Business Journal, Sports Pro, and then there's a couple of other sort of really smaller ones, I guess. But I read them daily because it became really important for me to understand what everyone else was doing. I don't think there's any shame in, you know, seeing inspiration in other broadcasts or other social strategies. So I definitely try and keep abreast of what's going on. And I think, as I said at the start, you know, speaking to people and having knowledge. And Gary Fenton was an interesting one again, you know, very pivotal in my career, but also, you know, things that he said even back in the day, he was always saying like, knowledge is power, knowledge is power. And he didn't mean like knowledge is power to go and, you know, crush people with. He meant the more you understand about what you're doing and the industry, the further you'll go. You know, you'll have the sort of information that people need. And I also mentioned, you know, it was a tough interview because he asked me in the interview, because I was, you know, going for sports programming at the Olympics, and he said, what's the difference between Greco-Roman and freestyle wrestling? And I'm like, I don't know. I've never seen wrestling in my life, but I can find out for you pretty quickly. And he said, look, that's the answer I wanted. If you tried to lie to me, or if you tried to sort of fluff your way through that, you would have been out. But, you know, acknowledge what you don't know and try and learn as much as you can in every opportunity you have. And those sports newsletters are really, really important to, you know, a lot of them now even advertise sort of jobs. These are the key jobs that are around at the moment. So you can find who's hiring and what they're doing.
Nice one. This is a bit of a situational one for you. So say you were looking to get into social media, as plenty of people out there are. You're looking to get a job right now. You're in your mid-20s. You're looking to make a bit of a career change. What are some steps you would take to get that first piece of paid experience?
I think at the moment, a lot of people are looking for vertical video producers. We just hired one here. I think we'll be looking for another one fairly soon. People who understand the platforms is really, really important. And putting a piece of paper and submitting it and saying, I understand social media doesn't really mean as much as proving that you've got a social channel that's got traction, or that you like a show reel. Like, I need to see what you've produced or how you produce content to take you seriously. I think YouTube channels help. Podcasts help. All of these things. Again, practical experience or demonstrating knowledge in a practical way is really important, especially for me.
So you reckon get out there, start editing, start practicing, create your own channel. Is if you could start your own channel right now on anything that you were interested in, Melissa, what would it be?
Oh, goodness me.
Would you go back to your politics?
Yeah, I was about to say.
No, that's always a dangerous area. No, I don't know. I've moved with a family many, many times, and if I had the time, I'd probably start a YouTube channel or something about how to do these things easily. Because once you've done it once, you always think it's going to be easy the second time. It's never easy moving with a family. It's always there's always little things. But one thing we should have done when we lived in the US, we moved to a suburb called Maplewood, and it's a beautiful town in New Jersey, 30 minutes out of Manhattan. And we bought an old doer-upper. And my husband, who was waiting on a work visa, decided to start doing it himself. And we completely renovated, I should say I did nothing. He completely renovated a 5-bedroom house using YouTube videos as a guide. So I should have made something out of that. We have a lot of friends who work in TV. We're all talking about it, but we just never got it done. But that would have been the perfect subject matter.
I've seen a few of them. I don't know why, but I've seen people like build mini houses in the forest, and like the YouTube goes for like 10 hours and it's just a time lapse of the whole thing going up. So imagine your 5-story house. Sorry, not 5-story, five
bedroom.
Yeah, 5-bedroom house. That would have been quite the task. So, oh well, that's pretty cool though.
Learning how to put a toilet in when you've never done one before is it's always fascinating.
Wow,
amazing.
No, I mean, for me at the moment, what I'm really, really interested in is those key topics. What's really happening with the metaverse? Meta just announced, and I was working in this area before I left Meta, and it's fascinating, and the Quest headset is amazing, and I know it's going to be a really big topic in the future, even if people sort of don't take it seriously now. It will get there. It's a matter of time and patience and again strategic thought. But the metaverse is something that's really, really interesting to me, and I think the other one is augmented reality, XR, and AI, and these just intersections of we're really seeing the world in a way that it's going to change forever again. And this is a big pivot that's happening, and it's a matter of like how we adopt it to the lives we're living now more than anything. And that's really interesting to me, and probably the subject of a podcast if I had time, or a social media channel if I had time, but I definitely don't have time.
So what you're saying is you've already got the handles locked down for a future date.
No, there's a lot of really intelligent people out there doing it, and they're the ones that I'm watching and listening to.
Amazing. Yeah. We've got one last question for you, Melissa. This has been fascinating learning about your experience, but if you could go back and place a note on the desk of a student hoping to one day reach the position that you're in right now, what piece of advice would you leave on that note?
It would be something that's becoming, I think, a movement or a trend in advice. It would be work hard and be kind to people. And I think there are a couple of reasons why I say that. The work hard is there's no way around it. I mean, the competition for jobs and the pressure on jobs once you get it is that people in this environment are expecting people to really know what they're doing and work hard. So it doesn't matter if you don't know everything, and it doesn't matter if you're the complete expert, as long as you show the potential that you can get there. But to be kind to people, we were talking before that it's a small industry in sports, and people, you don't know where someone's going to end up. You don't know if that production assistant or AP that was at Network 10 is going to have, a hiring job at Redbull, a hiring job at Meta, and then a hiring job at SailGP in London. So, over a certain period of time, you could be exposed to that person many, many times. If they remember you as a kind person or someone who's done kind things or helped people, that is more impactful than they did their good job really, really well sometimes, because we all want to work in companies where kindness is a feature, I guess. And that's a new one that's really popped up, and it really resonated with me when I heard it.
Amazing. I think Hamish McLaughlin had very similar advice when we asked him the question too. So good note to end on.
Yep. Ru, so we've had Melissa. What are some other episodes similar that people would enjoy?
Yeah, well, prior to recording this, we found out that Melissa, you and us have got a few shared contacts, one of which that is in that space is Finn Bradshaw. He came on the podcast in episode 50. He's the head of digital at the ICC. Easy one for myself to remember if people are interested more in this space. The other one is also easy to remember because it's episode 150. And that was Andrew Ryan, the head of media rights at FIBA. That is in Switzerland, not in Austria. So if anyone has enjoyed this chat with Melissa, then they can check out those two as well.
Fantastic. Well, Melissa, we might leave it there, but thank you so much for your time today. As Ruben listed off before, your experiences are just out of this world. And those listening would just literally dream to work at one of those places. So it's been amazing sort of going through your career and understanding a little bit about how you got there and some of the things that you've done throughout. So really appreciate your time again, and hope London treats you well.
Thank you for having me on board. Hope you get to see some racing soon.
Yeah, we'll have to come find some.
Absolutely. Thanks again. Guys, it's time now for Ask SportsGrad, where every week we answer a question from our community. If you'd like to ask a question, first become a SportsGrad member at www.sportsgrad.com.au/community, and then add your question to the channel named Ask SportsGrad. Now, Rubes, what have we got today?
Ryan, this one says, how can I make sure that the role I'm applying for aligns to my resume and that my cover letter covers everything that is needed as well? Excellent question and important question, because if your application doesn't match the job at hand, then you are no chance. Yep. Now, this might sound obvious, but so many people get it wrong. And a lot of the recruiters that we talk to will just say that, literally 70% of the people who have applied don't fit the role at all. Yep. Now, one common mistake that a lot of people make that I'm glad this person has brought up is that a lot of people will just write all about themselves, which might seem like the obvious thing to do. You're writing a resume, cover letter to sell yourself. So write about yourself, right? Well, actually, your focus should be on the job. You should be writing to fill the need of the organisation. Yeah. Nobody cares what you can do. Everybody cares what you can do for them. So therefore, if you are writing the same cover letter and resume time and time again, over and over and over, reproducing the same one, just saying, this is me, and handing into every single place, you're going to get rejected every time. I can guarantee it. So, great question. How can you make sure that the role that you're applying for aligns with what's on your cover letter and your resume? The first thing you're going to do is a process that I call dissecting the job description. Now, this is where you literally scan the job description to make sure that you understand the top skill priorities of the job in front of you. So that literally means like getting a pen out, getting a highlighter out, and highlighting every single skill that you see on the page. Yeah. This could be communication. This could be writing. This could be editing. This could be, analyzing data, whatever. Highlight every single one of them. Now, if you do it properly, there's probably going to be like 20, 25 different skills. Like a lot of these job descriptions just ask the world of you. So how do you make sure that you write one that's like tailored and aligned and specific to it? Well, you're literally going to go through and count them. Just simply count how many times each skill is mentioned. Yeah. And then if you want to chuck this into Excel and sort the skills by number of times they're mentioned, then you should be able to see which skills have been mentioned the most. Yeah. Now, you want to take the top 3 skills from that and focus on addressing them. You know, the resume might say you need to be proficient at Microsoft Office. Don't mention that on, don't waste space on your resume or your cover letter mentioning you're proficient at Microsoft Office, because that is like the baseline.
I know how to use Word.
Literally, you'd be surprised how many people have that on there. And if you have that on your resume right now, take it off because you're wasting space.
Get it off.
Get it off. So focus on the top 3 essential skills to the job. And you're going to write a body paragraph on each one of those things and explain a situation or example of how you've done that. So that's your cover letter. Focus on the top 3 skills, write a paragraph on how you've done each one. Then when you get your resume, rank your experiences in order of relevancy to the skills. That way, when a hiring manager picks it up and they look at your documents, they can straight away see that you are a perfect fit for the job at hand. So if you're finding that is not the case and your experience doesn't match up, then you're probably not suited to that job. And if you're finding that you do have the experience, but what you're writing isn't aligned to it, then take the time to do it properly, look at the job description and tailor everything. Because I can guarantee you that about 9 out of 10 people need to rewrite their cover letter right now.
Yeah. A quick point on rewriting a cover letter. We know that it can be annoying to do it. Like it's a little bit time consuming. You've got to write a couple of pages or a page or whatever you want to do every time, and it can be annoying. But there's so many times like we are speaking to hiring managers and they're saying, I know that they've just copied it or they've got the name wrong at the top. Like if you're just using the same cover letter, it will happen. It's so noticeable. So just take the extra 15 minutes, like half an hour, whatever you need to do, and just make a new one.
Yep.
Like it is so worth it, and it's very, very noticeable when you just use the same one for every job.
Yep.
So
applying for jobs is a skill. It's a combination of being able to write and being able to have empathy for an organisation. If you can combine the two, then you should have a good application.
Yep.
Just like if you were to go to practice to be a better tennis player, you need to practice to be a better application. What do you call them? Better at applying for jobs. Applier? Yeah, something like that.
I like it.
If your documents aren't aligning, that's where I'd start.
Awesome. Well, if you'd like to ask us a question or ask our friends in sport a question, sign up to become a SportsGrad member. Each week, as Rubes mentioned, we jump on an Ask SportsGrad call every Wednesday night where it's an open floor for you to ask us or industry professionals any of your questions. So this Wednesday, I think we're focusing on social media, which is very exciting. So jump online, become a member, and you can get involved. All these sessions are recorded. So when you join, you get immediate access to over 50 hours of content, which is basically like Netflix. And I mentioned that last week, but it is kind of like Netflix and Binge and Stan and all those other streaming services. So get online and become part of it. You can find us on LinkedIn if you haven't already. Give us some love with a rating if you enjoy the show. Subscribe on Apple or follow on Spotify. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Hey guys, one last thing before you go. If you'd enjoy a quick email from us each Friday on all the latest job openings, networking events, Q&As with industry professionals and latest podcast episodes, then subscribe to the SportsGrad newsletter. Head to our website www.sportsgrad.com.au/newsletter to subscribe. There's also a link in our show notes to join.